So I started this thought with you last week about anxiety, shared some of my story. Several of you reached out just through phone, text, emails, cards, prayer cards in the back, just to share a little bit of yours and ask you to be praying for you. I want you to know that I certainly have been. And uh, I pray and I hope that it's a help. I can't go over my story again because it would take up the whole time again. I want to bring you to what, for me anyway, when the Lord brought me to First Peter, I read the most convicting and the most helpful thing all at the same time. And so I'm going to show you where that is in just in a few moments. So that's in First Peter. We'll work through a little bit chapter 4 and chapter 5. But I want to bring you to convicting and helping. So if it's like, man, Randall, that's a tough thought to give to somebody who's already fighting anxiety or being anxious. Yes, but at the same time, I found it to be super helpful. And so I'll share that with you in just in a moment. I need to give my disclaimer, and that is I'm not a medical or a mental professional. Telling my story, sharing my response to it. This was last year, about this time last year, for about 4 or 5 months. I went through a terrible bout, unreasonable, unexplainable, irrational, and so went into a lot of that last week. So I don't pretend that all anxiety is equal, and I don't pretend like what I'm going to share with you. What I'm going to share with you, I think, is scriptural and biblical, and it can be applied to other areas of life, not just for those who would be battling anxiety. But I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all. I'm always leery when someone says, well, you just need to do this. And so I don't like to start sentences with just need to do, because that comes across like I'm trying to simplify something that I may not know all of your story, your starting points, your obstacles, your challenges. And so I want to take all of that into consideration when I'm speaking about this. Simply, so it's personal. So I realize it's kind of anecdotal in that sense, but I do believe the scripture that we stand on can be something that you can definitely stand on. And I do believe that God heals mind, body, and soul. He uses sometimes the medical professional world to help do that, just like in whether it's a physical problem, and sometimes the Lord just steps in and shows up with a miracle that you just can't explain otherwise. Here were 2 points from last week. These were our 2 takeaways, and that is, you're not alone. And I hope that that's what you took away from it last week. And so if you've been anxious about even saying anything to anybody, you're not alone. In fact, within the Christian community, I would say that you're in very good company. And also, where we ended and where I want to start with you today is, God has a purpose for what you find yourself going through. He always has a purpose. Nothing catches him off guard. Nothing. Never does God say, "Oh, I didn't see that coming." He sees it all coming. He sometimes orchestrates it, but ultimately he definitely allows it. So, 1 Peter chapter 4, 12 and 13, and then I want to look with you in 1 Peter chapter 5 and share with you what I believe the Lord spoke to me in that moment. He gave me a word the day before, and I say a word, I believe in the word of God and the voice of God. The voice of God is when you and I say, well, the Lord spoke to my heart and said. So I use that kind of language, right? You probably use that kind of language. I've used that language all my life. The Lord spoke to my heart and said this or that. That's always up for interpretation and discernment. I do believe the Lord still speaks to us, and he speaks to our hearts. But I also have to take that into consideration that there might be a little bit of Randall in that too, right? But so that's the voice of God. The word of God, I stand on that. That's what I build my theology on. That's where I want to build my beliefs on, is the word of God. The voice of God did, I believe, he spoke to me. and gave me this phrase that I looked into that I shared with you last week, the dark night of the soul. But then the very next day, he led me to 1 Peter. And then with that dark night of the soul in mind, as I'm reading through 1 Peter, it just jumped out and I found such relief. And the phrase that I'm going to read to you in just in a few moments is the one that was so convicting for me, but it was so helpful that I believe after that, I really did begin to see good progress. 1 Peter, if you're there, 1 Peter chapter 4, and in verse 12, he says this, "Beloved, do not be surprised at the fiery trial when it comes upon you to test you." Don't be surprised, because that's what I kept saying, like, Lord, where is this coming from? As though something strange were happening to you. So when we fall under the fiery trial, we shouldn't say, and I said over and over, this is so strange. That's what I told my buddies. This is so strange. This is so strange. It's like it's unreasonable. It's irrational. Why is this happening? He said, don't think it's so strange that this is happening to you, but rejoice insofar as you share Christ's sufferings, that you may also rejoice and be glad when his glory is revealed. Most of Scripture has a two-prong application. One can always be talking about like the day of the Lord. And it says here, when Christ shall be revealed. So if you think that he's talking about one of these days when he comes back, that's an absolute good application. Also, the Lord also wants to reveal himself to you now, during these days. And so the Lord can also reveal himself to you. And he's going to do that through this fiery trial. And now, jump down with me in verse 5. So, chapter 5, he's talked about preachers, pastors, elders, and that got my attention. But then he says, this is to all of you. So he's making some sort of concluding remarks. I'm in verse 5, second part of chapter 5, second part of verse 5. Clothe yourself, all of you, not just the elders or the pastors, clothe yourself, all of you, with humility toward one another, for God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. So what in the world does that have to do with anxiety? Just hang on just a moment. Humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, so that at the proper time he may exalt you. You're not going to live under that fiery trial forever. And because you're going to grow from it, the Lord's going to be able to use you in greater ways, because there's a purpose for this. And most of the time when God brings us through something, it's rarely for a sideways move. Because why? Why do that? So if the Lord's bringing me through something and he wants me to grow, he wants me to grow for what reason? Because there's something more that he's going to place upon your shoulders, some opportunity, something's coming that he needs to prep and prepare you for, hence the reason that we're going through what we're going through. But he said, I want you to stay humble. Why? So I can exalt you. Now here, verse 7. Casting all your anxieties on him, because he cares for you. Listen to that. Casting all your anxiety on him. Not just casting your anxiety away. Jesus says, give those to me. Because there's something about, if I've got this, let's just say this basket of troubles, this basket of concern, and you tell me, Randall, take those baskets of concern and just cast them over the hill. Be like, I don't know who's down there. I don't know what will happen to them. But Jesus said, no, I'm not asking you to cast them away. I'm asking you, would you entrust them to me? Yeah, okay. I can do that. I mean, and here's the beautiful thing, folks. He's commanding you to do so. It's like, Jesus, the last thing you need is another. Understand, he is infinite, all-powerful, lacks no resource, unlimited in power and scope. And so when Jesus commands you to cast your care upon him, you don't have to worry about, well, I'm just burdening him so much, and it seems like all I do is complain. Our frame of reference is how we have to deal with each other. And to be quite honest, sometimes it's too much when we share with each other. And I realize that. And so that's why we're kind of guarded. And we understand I can help you a little bit. Maybe you help me a little bit. But only the Lord is unlimited in what he can carry. And so the Lord comes to you and says, you give those to me. And would you entrust me with the things that are causing that anxiety? Cast them on me. And notice he says cast. And I love this. Because that's like from wherever you're at. When I was a kid, we would say chuck them. You just chuck them. Just like get rid of them. You don't have to hand them off. Just throw them up on him. Cast all your cares upon him. Look at the next phrase. Because he cares for you. I care for you. You care for me. You care for your family. You care for your loved ones. We care for each other. But again, we are finite. We care for one another, but again, we're limited in how much we can care. I can care about anything. I can't care about everything. The Lord can care about everything and everyone. Cast all your care upon him. Why? Because he cares for you. Love that. Now, look with me. Because he cares for you. And immediately after that, immediately after he talks about those of us who are anxious, he says, be sober-minded. Be watchful. Why? Look at this. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. Resist him. Firm in your faith, knowing that the same kinds of suffering, think it not strange, knowing that the same kind of sufferings are being experienced by your brotherhood throughout all the world. Immediately after he talks to those of us who are anxious, he says, here's the warning, and this is what convicted me. That the devil is out there and he's looking for someone to devour. Isn't that interesting that it goes right on the tail end of don't be anxious? You know why not to be anxious? And if I were telling you this would make you anxious. Don't be anxious. I want you to cast all your care upon me. Well, why? Because the devil's out there like a roaring lion looking somebody to devour. Well, Randall, that kind of makes me more anxious. That's why you have to cast your care upon him. Because he cares for you. And if he takes responsibility for the things that make you anxious, do you think he will then defend you when the devil shows up? Absolutely. The enemy is pure evil. This is what we got to understand about the devil. And again, it's our frame of reference is with people and the people that we run into, and we say some folks, and we'll see news stories about somebody will say, oh, that's just pure evil. Even those humans who are pure evil, you might, if you follow their life, you might find them doing something good to somebody. I mean, they may have a dog that they take care of. The enemy is pure evil. He goes after the most vulnerable. And he can smell anxiety. The most vulnerable. This is why I know that Satan is pure evil. If you're a strong man and you want to show your strength and you come into the room here and you want to show off and you want to beat up somebody and you want to take advantage of somebody, I would just think, like, pick the strongest one of us. And you can't include me because that's just not fair. But you size up the toughest guy in the room and you want to show off. But what if the strong guy comes in and he picks the one who is in a wheelchair? You would say, well, you can't do that. That's pure evil, right? That's just pure evil. And this is exactly what Satan does. He seeking whom he may devour, and he smells out anxiety because he's pure evil. This is what he goes after. Satan, unlike the lions that you see on the National Geographic shows, Satan goes after the most vulnerable. He goes after the one that's hobbling, that's sort of struggling in the back of the herd. That's who Satan goes after. And this is why when Peter's writing, he said, I want you to be sober-minded, understand something. The risk of being anxious gets the devil's attention upon you. And he wants to devour. And how did he devour? like he devours everybody's lies. He just lies. And again, think about the evil of lying. You know, if you jump somebody, you take the risk of them maybe overpowering you or getting a lucky punch. But if I lie about somebody, I can lie in secret. I can just say something to you like, hey, I don't know if this is true or not, but I plant some thought in your mind about somebody else. How evil is that? But you know what? It takes hardly no effort on your part to lie. This is why God hates lying so bad. And this is Satan's number one tactic, is to lie, is to get you to believe a lie. Here's some of them. If you were a better Christian, this wouldn't be happening. That's a lie. I mean, I just know that's a lie. So, well, how do you know that's a lie? Because I know that Elijah pouted under the tree. I know that David struggled. You can see it in his, you can just like read the Psalms. They struggled. They wrestled with things. Well, if you were a better Christian, and this is one of the reasons that keeps us quiet when we go through stuff. Others have it worse, therefore you should stay quiet. This was one for me. Because I knew, like, Lord, I don't want to tell somebody that I've struggled with anxiety. It's like, because if you said, when I say that, you assume that I got some big, heavy-weighted matters in my life. I kind of don't. I kind of didn't. I had a half a dozen things that needed to be tended to, and yet those half a dozen things were just like exaggerated so bad in my life. And for me to come share them with people who I know have like real stuff going on, I thought, well, yeah, they can't even pray for me. I wouldn't even want them to pray for me because they're going to compare my stuff to their stuff, and they're going to be thinking, you should be the one praying for me. It's like, I know that you feel that, but I know that's also a lie. Because when I would share with somebody and say, hey, would you pray for me? They had such empathy for me. And it didn't matter what the reasons was that I was going through. So I know that's a lie. Keep it to yourself or people will think less of you. That's a lie. No one really wants to hear about your struggles. That's a half a lie. So I don't say that you have to tell everybody all the time. You know, like, have you ever met just a couple of days ago, like in the grocery line? I just was trying to be like friendly for just a moment, but before we got out of that grocery line, I felt like I knew this guy's life. Like he told me a whole bunch of stuff in a little bit of time. And I just thought maybe the Lord was, causing our paths to cross, but that's not me. It takes a long time to get stuff out of me. So I know, and most of the time I know, like when we say, hey, how's stuff going? You say fine, I say fine, and that's fine to say that. You don't you don't have to be like, well, do you really want to know? Because then I'm like, I don't know. Do I really want to know? But I would say this. There's some folk in your life who do want to know, and they do care. So Randall, I don't know that we have anybody. You do now. You got me. You got us. You do now. So you have some folk who do care about your struggles. It's a lie to say that the devil wants you to believe it. Even if things are good today, tomorrow they'll be worse. Right? I know that there's some good things going on right now, but tomorrow or next week or next month, I know it could be, but right now it's not. And this is one of the lessons that we'll close out with next week, because it's really where God's wanting to get you, is to get you concreted in today. Today. It's never going to get better, so accept it. That's a lie. That's just a lie. It is going to get better, ultimately going to get better for every believer in the room. Not just, I think, in eternity for eternity's sake, but I also believe for here. And my heart's gone out to many of you, because I've heard from several of you this week about, what I felt like I went through was for a few months, and many of you have gone through it for years. And my heart goes out to you. And I would say, the longer you go through things, the greater the impact you're going to have when God brings you through that thing. And so the deeper the work is going to go. We planted at one time some grapes, little grapevines, and I had a lady to come out and teach me how to grow grapes. And she said, first thing she did, we planted them, and she came out a few months later, and these little grapevines were about that tall, and they already started to bloom a little bit. And I was so proud. I was like, I planted that, and it's already growing. Look at that. We're going to have grapes this year. They tell me, you're not going to have grapes for 4 or 5 years. I'm going to have grapes this year. And that lady came out, and she reached down, and I said, yeah, look, this one's already blooming. And she says, it is, isn't it? And she reached down and picked the bloom off. And then she started picking the bloom off of all of them. I was like, what are you doing? What are you doing? She said, no, I don't want it to produce fruit this year. No, I don't want it to do that. I thought, I've got the wrong gal. Somebody suckered me. They told me you was good, and here you're picking these. I mean, you don't do that. That represents a cluster of grapes, right? And then she went through and she said, "Oh, this one looks like it's." She said, "This one looks like it's resting too easy." And she took the thing and started just like jerk it up, almost like up out of the ground. And again, I'm thinking, what in the world? She said, "I want it to struggle." So do you want it to struggle? And right then I knew there is a sermon illustration fixing to happen. She said, "No, yeah, I want this thing to struggle. And I don't want it to produce fruit." And she said, roots, shoots, or fruit. You can have any of those three. You can't have all of those three. She said, you have to decide which one you want at what time. She said, I want that root system struggling because it will drive it deeper into the ground. And she said, if you'll not let it produce fruit like it wants to do, and you cause it to struggle, it'll drive a taproot down deep. And she said, yeah, you can get fruit off of it 1 or 2 years, or it'll produce something, she said, but the fruit it's going to produce in the first couple, 3 years is going to be anemic. She said, you cause that vine to struggle and drive that root down deep, and she said, it'll produce fruit for 40 years from now. I was like, all right, let's just start just jerking, everything. The longer you struggle, the deeper the struggle, the greater results God's going to bring from that. Remember, He doesn't waste pain. So whatever it is that you're going through, it's going to be a blessing to you, and chances are it's going to be a blessing to a whole lot of other people. So it will get better, and God's going to use it. And no, God is not punishing you. It's just lies. So what does your anxiety signal? And this was the convicting thing to me. What my anxiety signals to the devil, and that is that I'm looking to myself too much. And that's what makes me vulnerable to Satan. The reason that I'm anxious is because I feel like all this depends upon me. All of these things that I list out here in front of me, it's like, I got to do this and I got to do that and at some point the Lord said, I thought I was driving. I thought I was flying. Can you imagine me getting on a plane right now? And they always say, hey, if something happens, if you're sitting in one of these rows, you may be required to open the door. To me, that's already pushing it. Like, what do you mean if something? And then this is going to fall out in case of a water landing. I'm thinking, we're just going from here to Atlanta, But can you imagine if they said also we may come back and tap one of you on the shoulder to fly us the rest of the way there? I would be very anxious on that flight, right? You'd be like, not me. I would hide out in that little bathroom the whole time because I don't want to be tapped on the shoulder to do this. Obviously, you're going to be anxious. But you can also get on there, check the pilot out, and say, I think I think that person knows what they're doing. Go back, put me some earphones on or whatever, and sleep. Because I'm not anxious. Why? Because I'm not flying it. You only get anxious when you feel like it's resting so much upon you. And that's what Satan's looking for. He's seeking about looking for somebody saying, oh, you think that it's up to you. You think this whole thing called the Christian life is in your hands. And you don't realize that you're his workmanship. Why don't some of your prayers be like this? God, what are you up to? I'm the work of his hands. He's the one holding on to me. I'm not holding on. If it were me holding on to him, it's already over. He's holding on to me. He's the one flying the plane. He's the one in control. He's the one leading me. My job is to trust him and keep my eyes on him. To my anxious friends, 2 other things today. Number 3, because we had 1 and 2 last week, change the focus of your fixation. Cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. One thing I know about us anxious folk is we can fixate on things. We can rehearse stuff over and over and over in our mind. So, instead of trying to get you to not fixate on something, I wonder if we could fixate on the right thing. And what would the right thing be? The right thing would be Jesus. What would it be like to keep my eyes so much on him? Cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. Listen to this verse, Isaiah 26:3. Who keeps him in perfect peace, Isaiah says, that the Lord keeps that person in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on you because he trusts in you. Fixate on Jesus. Focus on Jesus. Become a Jesus focuser. Number 4, lastly, use sleep as a weapon. I told you last week that I had trouble sleeping for months, and then the Lord led me to this verse. And I remember that night, that began to get better and better and better and better. Because I would get up early and I would stay up late. And I know sometimes you have to do that with a job or a deadline or something like that, but listen to the wisdom of the verse. It is vain that you rise up early and go late to rest, eating the bread of anxious toil. Go to bed late, get up early. I got to get after it because why? So much is counting on me. For he gives, this is God, he gives to his beloved sleep. Dear friend, sleep is a spiritual weapon. Now, I know some of you, that's like music to your ears right now. And somebody asks you, hey, what are you doing? I'm fighting the devil and I'm going to go take a nap. There's a lot of truth to that. The fact that you can sleep with great peace. Try this tonight, especially for my anxious friend. Go to bed and just say, and this is what I said, and I probably don't say it every night, but almost every night. One of the last thoughts I want to say, one of the last thoughts I want to verbalize is, God, thank you for loving me. Thank you for loving me. And now I'm going to sleep. I want you to watch over me. Give me good rest. It's amazing, just that. In Bible times, even like today, when you're asleep, it's the most vulnerable time of the day. That's the reason they had walled cities, because we would sleep. And when you're asleep, it's the most vulnerable time. And really what it's saying is, I'm going to go to sleep and I'm going to trust the God of heaven who never sleeps to watch over me. And he's got me. I think it's one of the reasons that with the Hebrews, especially back in Bible times, within the Hebrews, their day started at 6 o'clock of the evening. You aware of that? Evening and morning. So could you imagine? And I've tried to do it, and it's so hard to do, to get in this frame of mind that my day starts at 6 p.m. So for those in Bible times, their day started basically with them going to sleep. So the first thing they would do is lay themselves down and say, Dear God, I trust you as I go into my most vulnerable state, which is called sleep. Trust in Him. It is a weapon. If you're struggling with it, let me just encourage you. Read that verse over you tonight and just thank the Lord. It's because it says He gives His beloved sleep. And I believe it's a marker for how much I'm trusting in the one to watch over me when I'm not watching over myself. I hope it can be a help and a blessing. There's another phrase here. Now we'll look at it next week. Look at this in verse 10, and I'll just read the phrase to you. Verse 10, here's what grabbed me, and it says this, and after you have suffered a little while. That got my attention. After you have suffered a little while, I got something for you, he says. It's coming. After you have suffered a little while. We'll cover that next week. Stick around with us.